opinion I'm expressing here, but my own feeling about singer-songwriters is that those who are in touch with the tradition tend to have more to bring to their own songs. That's certainly for this one. I'm sure you all know more about him than I can tell you, so just give him a big, big warm welcome. Alistair Hulett.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here at your club, and I think the three musicians that just played before deserve a round of applause one more time. I lived in Australia for about 25 years. You can probably tell that from my accent. I'm originally from Scotland. During the time that I spent in Australia, I kind of developed quite a fascination for Australian Labour history with a small L. The kind of perception that we tend to get of Australia from shows like Neighbours and so on, you would think it was a sort of affluent, predominantly white, middle-class society. That the Australian working class has got a remarkable history of resistance. Australia was the first English-speaking country to form a Labour Party, and it came out of the Shearers' strike of 1891. This is a song that I've written about a strike that took place in 1949. And old war horses of the left, of both the communist and the Labour persuasion, will still argue long into the night over the rights and the wrongs of it. What happened was the Communist Party had grown quite massively and had become a mass party in Australia, so much so that its leadership felt it was in a position to challenge Labour for the position of official working class party. That they decided to take a shortcut to bring that about. They took the mine workers out on strike for an 8-hour day. The Mine Workers Federation was under the leadership of the CPA at the time. And there was a Labour government in power led by a fellow called Ben Chifley, who was quite a left-wing Prime Minister by today's standards. They went out on strike for an 8-hour day, knowing that although this was a central plank of Labour Party policy, Ben Chifley would argue that it was not in the economic interest of Australia to grant it at this time, and they hoped that this would swing the support away from Labour and over to the Communist Party. And they were right that Ben Chifley would oppose it, but he went a lot further than even they imagined he would. He declared the strike to be illegal. He said it was a communist plot to destroy the Australian economy, launched a media campaign called the Reds, that came to be known as the Reds Beneath the Bed scare campaign, and jailed the strike leaders, seized the strike funds, and eventually sent the army in to smash the strike. And the Communist Party throwing his hands out, right, wait till the election day comes around and you'll get yours, pal. Unfortunately, there was a landslide victory for the Tories at that and there was a lot of acrimony on both sides, as you can imagine, with both the Communist and the Labour supporters blaming each other for that situation. I think there's a number of lessons to be learned from that. I think one of the principal ones is that it's a tactical error for socialists of any persuasion to press on so far ahead of the majority of the population that they leave them clutching at straws and eventually voting for a party that does not have their best interests at heart. So anyway, I'll leave you to figure out what side I'm on by singing the song. The chorus goes, "Workers united will never be defeated. History will honour those who rally to the call. Determined and resolved not to be bought out or cheated till bread and peace and liberty is the common right of all." If you can't remember all that, bread and peace and liberty is the common right of all, will do just fine. So, in the days of 49. The Miners' Federation, they took on the big Australian backed by government and law. Shipley sent the troops to force them by starvation to respect the right of capital to rule by tooth and claw. They seized the miners' property, they threw the leaders into jail. The papers called it war against the Reds beneath the bed. The miners stood their ground, they would not submit to blackmail, and the cash flowed in from far and near to keep their families fed. Workers united will never be defeated. History will honour those who rally to the call, determined and resolved not to be bought out or cheated, till bread and peace and liberty's the common right of all. Till bread and peace and liberty's the common right of all. Dockers, metal workers, nurses and shopkeepers, they sent passion food, wrote letters of support to help the fight. The thing that was most needed was endorsement from the Trades and Labour Council, but the colours kept their kid gloves and lily white. Workers united will never be defeated. History will honour those who rally to the call, determined and resolved not to be bought out or cheated, till bread and peace and liberty's the common right of all. Who would sign a bloody saying, workers always get the blame, holding up the holy wheels of progress, putting spanners in the works. All we care about is lux. That's the reason why this country's in a bloody mess. So live on less. Working class careerists with an eye on greener pastures did a deal with power and capital to stem the growing tide. The lesson must be learned, it must never be forgotten, how Chipley and his government stood on the boss's side. Workers united will never be defeated. History will honour those who rally to the call, determined and resolved not to be bought out and cheated, till bread and peace and liberty's the common right of all. Till bread and peace and liberty's the common right of all. Till bread and peace and liberty's the common right of all. Yeah, I've been absolutely besotted with the traditional folk music of Ireland, Scotland, Wales, England and Australia for many, many years, and particularly the ballads. I'm going to sing you a ballad that is a fairly light-hearted one. I'll do some of the more bloody ones a bit later on. But this is a ballad that comes from Glasgow, but it's not an urban song. It's a rural song from Glasgow, from the days before Glasgow was a city. It's still a sleepy little fishing village on the banks of the River Clyde. And it tells the story of a young woman who has two lovers. One is a tinker, the other's a fisherman. She upsets the tinker by getting married to the fisherman. And while the two are away on their honeymoon, the tinker's coming to terms with the fact that he's just been dumped. As he thinks about it, he realises that the situation is not as dire as he first imagined, because by the nature of the fisherman's work, of course, he's away from home all night, 5 nights a week, and he realises that is actually a situation he can live with rather well. Of course, as luck would have it in such songs as this, the night that he goes to pay her visits, the very night that the fisherman comes home early, and the tinker takes some bad advice from the young woman. She advises him to hide up the chimney. Not the right thing to do. It can go really pear-shaped. The song's called The Tinker in the Lum. Lum's an old Scots word for a chimney, so The Tinker in the Chimney in English. The chorus is dead simple. Dum dum, hi-diddy-do. And it's a sort of tankard swinging song. Get right in, they get wired right in here. Oh, Butterfingers. I'll sing ye a song that'll please you right well, concerning a lassie in Glasgow did dwell. 12 lovers she had, and she often confessed she couldn't tell which of them she loved the best. Diddy-dum, dum, aye diddy-do. One was a tinker, a stout roving blade, the other by fishing did earn his bread. Jock was the first that did marriage propose, so he and the tinker they did become foes. Diddy-dum, dum, aye diddy-do. The jock and his bell up to London did go, and there they got married, I'll have you to know. The tinker he watched by night and by day, he paid her a visit when Jock was away. Diddy-dum, dum, aye diddy-do. And when Beatty the fisherman's house did repair, she made him quite welcome as soon as he got there. She said, Jock is away, Kate fetches a dram, we'll make ourselves happy this night if we can. Diddy-dum, dum, aye diddy-do. And with gentle persuasion he gained her consent. The tinker and her up together they went into a fine room, the hour to pass in sweet conversation and drinking their glass. Diddy-dum, dum, aye diddy-do. At midnight a rapping that came to the door, said she, it's a rapper, my husband I'm sure. One holy day this night to become, the best thing I know is to hide in the lum. Diddy-dum, dum, aye diddy-do. So well in the lum, right fast he did stick. He thought to himself she was playing him a trick. They'll get to the door and she'll let her Jock in. Said she, my dear man, you're soaked to the skin. Diddy-dum, dum, aye diddy-do. Kindled the fire, now this is the joke. Well in the lum was there stifled with smoke. Down he came tumbling, gain a wild roar, and Jock in a fright he fell flat on the floor. Diddy-dum, dum, aye diddy-do. Well, took to his heels and away did run, sick with the smoking he'd got in the lung. When Jock come to in the house he did reel, say, no my dear wife, I've just met the devil. Oh dum, dum, aye diddy-do. Jock and his bride in love do agree, well never came back his old sweetheart they see. Jock never grumbles when hame he does come, for fear of the devil that came down the lum. Diddy-dum, dum, aye diddy-do. I was out on tour a couple of years ago with my pal Dave Swarbrick, plays the fiddle quite well. And we were on our way to a gig up here in Yorkshire, and I forget exactly where, but we drove through what used to be the mining community of Grindthorpe. On our way there, and it was like trying to go awesome. We were absolutely dejected. All the shops were boarded up, and it was quite a disturbing experience. And a short time afterwards, I opened a newspaper to read that the last of the banks had just closed its doors for business in Grindthorpe because there wasn't any business. And the article went on to mention that some ex-miners had applied to the National Lottery for money to set up a drug rehabilitation centre there, because one of the attendant social problems with 85% male unemployment was widespread heroin abuse. And their application was turned down. It was unsuccessful. And just a short time previously, if you remember, one of Prince Charles's stately homes was caught fire and was damaged, and he received money from the National Lottery to restore it. And, the two things didn't sit well with me. So I wrote this song. It's called Harold's Best Men. I called it that because Harold Macmillan, famous for saying you've never had it so good, also said, when he was speaking of the British miners, he said they fought the Kaiser and they beat him, then they fought Hitler and they beat him too. They are the best men in the world. And it's actually true that more miners gave their lives during those two wars than any other trade in Britain. And so anyway, this is a song of what was done, or is being done to Harold's best men. What is sticking from us now? They closed the pit down. There's 85% unemployed in the stoon. One day's filled with sorrow that Strangbeer canny drown. A fiver will buy ye a bag o' the brown. We were Harold's best men when the pulley wheels ran. Now Johnny Miner is Johnny the man. An ill wind blows down Cutter's Lane that brings naebody good. It reeks of Harrowgate and it stains the walls with blood. There's needles in the gutter across the neighbourhood. We're told our wains are turning out nae better than they should. We were Harold's best men when the pulley wheels ran. Now Johnny Miner is Johnny the man. When the dogs of war were barking for mere Scottish blood to run, they took our picks and shovels, they gave us Tommy guns, marched us to the trenches, lined us up against the Hun. The frightened sons of mothers slaughtered other mothers' sons. We were Harold's best men when the pulley wheels ran. Now Johnny Miner is Johnny the man, and Mother Nature's cupboards bare. There's too many mouths to feed. That's what the king of the stockpile says when he pisses on the ones in need. There's always cash for palaces, there's always cash for war. None for the land of folk that what are. The supermarket's empty now, the stairwell's filled with bricks. The banks have moved away, and there's nothing at the flicks. According to the papers, we're vandals in the sticks. 'Cause Johnny's lost his job, now he steals to buy a fix. When the pulley wheels ran, we were Harold's best men. Now it's all turned to rust, but will not be gold again. When the pulley wheels ran, we were Harold's best men. Now it's all turned to rust, but will not be gold again.
Yeah!
There was a wee fella in Edinburgh back in the 1600s, a fellow called John Knox. And John was on you're laughing already. John was on a mission from God to abolish fun. Sort of Ian Paisley in tights. And Ulster says no. In those days, if you were caught engaging in what the church called Hoogmagandy, which is an old Scots word for sex and drugs and rock and roll. If you were caught engaging in Hoogmagandy, you could stand on a wee church stand on a wee stool in the church called the Cutty Stool, or the Stool of Repentance, as it was more properly known. And you'd have a big sign around your neck saying fornicate or drunk or whatever. And the minister would decide how many Sundays you were going to be standing on the Cutty Stool based on his assessment of the quality of the Hoogmagandy that you And I wrote this wee song imagining what it would be like to be subjected to that form of public humiliation, and the song turned out to be about somebody that wound up on the Cutty Stool and decided it was worth every minute of it. Let we sing together goes, I swore by the light of the morning sun, my drinking days were over. That very night I was back in town, following the ways of my rover. Do you want to try it? I swore by the light of the morning sun, my drinking days were over. That very night I was back in town, following the ways of my rover. I've tailed east, I've tailed west, and I've been south of the border. Seldom sober, often drunk, sometimes out of order. Sometimes I've been turtle up, and sometimes I've been traded. But when it's time to cop a whack, then I've copped up and paid it. I swore by the light of the morning sun, my drinking days were over. That very night I was back in town, following the ways of the rover. We toast for all fine sign things absent or departed. I'll drink tea main to love, though she was fickle-hearted. And lay me down with another girl, with a heap full of wine and brandy. Who gives a shite for the Cutty Stool? Let's hide the Hoogmagandy. The morning sun, the drinking days were over. That very night I was back in town, following the ways of the rover. Pagan knew it called it my vocation. I hate your Christian morals with your rules and regulations. Through the smoke of innocence, like coins will reel and spin. All down the gorgeous avenue, you call the path of sin. When I swore by the light of the morning sun, the drinking days were over. That very night I was back in town, following the ways of a rover. And I swore by the light of the morning sun, the drinking days were over. That very night I was back in town. All together, I was following the ways of a rover. This is a ballad. It's an industrial ballad. Thought about that while we're singing Poverty Knox. Which is a song, of course, about the dreadful conditions of the weavers. This is a love song, but it dates probably from sometime shortly after 1764. I know that because that was the year when James Hargreaves, a weaver from Lancashire, invented the steam shuttle, and in so doing kick-started the Industrial Revolution. But it also had the effect that handloom weavers, previously highly respected in their community, were dislodged from their traditional social group and driven deep into poverty. No matter how hard they worked and how long they worked, they simply couldn't compete with the mechanised looms. And of course, with the invention shortly after of the cotton jenny, the entire industry shifted from being an artisan, cottage-based form of production to a factory system. And this is a love song, a love story of a handloom weaver who's in love with a factory girl, much to the dismay of his father. It's a love triumphs. The weaver in the factory. Oh, I am a hand weaver to a trade. I fell in love with a factory maid, and if I could but her favour win, I would stand beside her and weep a steam. My father scornful unto me said, how could you fancy a factory maid when you could have girls both fine and gay, and dressed like unto the Queen of May? But for your fine girls, I don't care, and if I could but enjoy my dear, I'd stand in the factory all the day, and she and I keep our shuttles in play. I went to my lonesome bedroom door, where oftentimes I have been before, but I could not speak, no, nor yet get into the pleasant bed that my love laid in. How can you say it's a pleasant bed when out lies there but a factory maid, a factory lass, although she be, blessed is the man that enjoys she. Oh, pleasant thoughts come to my mind when I pull down the sheets so fine, and I've seen her two breasts standing so like two white hills all covered in snow. Where are the girls? I'll tell you plain. The girls have all gone to weave a steam, and if you find them, you must rise up with the dawn and trudge to the mill in the early morn. For the past 5 months, I've been heavily involved in a campaign in Glasgow. In the area that I live in, I live in a part of Glasgow called Govan Hill. And it hasn't been reported a great deal here south of the border, but up in Scotland we're the talk of the steamy, as they say. The Glasgow City Council announced, without any consultation whatsoever with the local people, that it was closing our swimming pool, which is housed in an old Edwardian sandstone building, listed building, and it has 3 pools, a sauna, and what used to be the communal wash house. A few days before it was due to close, 32 members of our community went in for a swim and took chains and padlocks with them and chained themselves inside the building. And we kept up a continuous occupation of the pool with the assistance of the security guards who were hired to protect it, who are Celtic Football Club's security. And at first they were a bit hostile to it, but then when we began to point out that that most of us were also Celtic supporters, they sort of warmed to us a bit there and started helping us get folk in and out. So we were able to keep the occupation going for 5 months, and we had a 24-hour presence outside as well on the picket line. We collected 30,000 signatures on a petition to keep the pool open, and about 3 weeks ago the council ordered the police in, and 250 police fought a pitched battle for 19 hours with 600 of the local people in Gordon Hill, and eventually got the steel shutters up on the windows and everybody out. They thought that the folk had been in there continuously. I think they were expecting to find people with big long beards and long fingernails. But one of the things that arose out of it was I began to write a few daft wee songs that we could sing on the picket line, and it sort of caught on. We're now in the archive of the Political Song Centre in Glasgow, the first of its kind, and apparently ours was the first campaign that they've been able to collect contemporary songs from. But I'll sing you a couple of the Gordon Hill Pool campaign songs. We've actually put them out on a CD that I've got here. Save Our Pool, songs from the Gordon Hill Pool campaign. And it's getting a bit of airplay. It's kind of unusual, and the national paper, the Herald, has picked up on it, and they said, well, the campaign's got a CD, now next they'll be making the movie. And folk began to write in with suggestions for the title of it. My favourite one was Towling Inferno. But we're singing Woody Guthrie song before, Our Traveller. Well, the 2 lads where I was joining in. But this is one I wrote with Woody, but he doesn't know that. You think I know it after all this time? This pool is my pool, this pool is your pool, but we'll have nae pool if we're no careful. They want to close it, but we oppose it, 'cause this pool belongs to you and me. Gonna try it. This pool is my pool, this pool is your pool, but we'll have nae pool if we're not careful. They want to close it, but we oppose it, 'cause this pool belongs to you and me. On Monday morning I woke up steaming, me iron Bruno, and it was teeming. I would be sorted if I was swimming, but this pool has been shut down to you and me. This pool is my pool, this pool is your pool, but we'll have nae pool if we're no careful. They want to close it, but we oppose it, 'cause this pool belongs to you and me. The doctor told me I had to get fit, or I'd be up for the cheery old chit. To the pool I donnered, but I was scunnered, 'cause this pool had been shut down to you and me. This pool is my pool, this pool is your pool, but we'll have this pool belongs to you and me. The Cathcart Road, up to the milk, there's some that fret, while others sulk. But here in Calder, Street or Boulder, we say this pool belongs to you and me. This pool is my pool, this pool is your pool, but we'll have no pool if we're not careful. They might take close it, but we oppose it, 'cause this pool belongs to you and me. Aye, this pool belongs to you and me. Aye, this pool belongs to you and me. Well, I'll maybe sing you some more Governor Hilton songs. I'll finish off this set with another ballad. This is the original that I think the English version of Geordie was based on. It's a Scots version, but don't be frightened of the Scots languages. It's not that far removed from English. It shares a common ancestor, Anglo-Saxon. It concerns a fellow who must rank as a serious contender for the title of Scotland's most outrageous chancer. 6th Earl of Huntly, George Gordon. He lived in the 17th century, and like John Knox, he believed he was on a mission, but his mission was to overthrow the Stuart monarchy and replace it with the House of Gordon. He was actually descended from an illegitimate son of one of the Stuart kings, so he felt that his claim to the throne was legitimate and that the House of Gordon should actually be the kings of Scotland. And Huntly turns up in ballad after ballad. The Bonnie Ell of Murray, for instance, or you might remember that song that June Tabor and Maddie Pryor recorded, the burning of Auchindoun. If you burn Auchindoun, Huntly, he will heed you. That means, chop your head off, right? Pay attention to you. But the thing to understand about the Scottish aristocracy in this period is that they were actually gangsters, right up to the king, who was sort of like the head gangster. And Huntly was a hitman. He took out contracts on people, and a contract was put out on the Bonnie Ell of Murray by the Scottish king, and Huntly was hired to do the job. The king later denied all knowledge of it, and Huntly was had to do time. He was jailed on quite a number of occasions. The first time for attempting to organise a Spanish invasion of Scotland that would precipitate the defeat of the Stuart monarchs. In this particular ballad, he's in jail because he's organised an uprising in the north of Scotland. This was fairly late in his life. Several of the nobles on both sides were killed, including a favourite of the king, Sir Charles Hay. So Huntly has been jailed, and he writes a letter to his wife asking her to come and see if she can sort it out and get him let off. And she has the foresight to bring along her Menzie. It's spelled M-E-N-Z-I-E. It means a squad of headies, basically. And she's pleading for his life and getting nowhere. The king is adamant that he's going to be beheaded until the squad of headies come in. And suddenly the king goes into damage control mode. It really illustrates the wonderful economy, the wonderful poetic economy of the ballads, because it just gives you that whole scenario in a single 4-line stanza. So, other Scots words you might need to know. She ends off saying there should have been bloody bouts on the green, I forsooth my laddie. Bloody bouts are dismembered corpses. Cheery stuff ballads. Anyway, this is Geordie. I'll take him. We'll all have a wee break after this. There was a battle in the north, and nobles they were mony, and they have killed Sir Charlie High, and bit the white one Geordie, but he has read in the lang letter and sent it to his lady, saying ye mun come up to Imbratun to see what wants a Geordie. When first she looked the letter on, she was baith red and rosy, she hadna read a line or twa, till she wallowed like a lily. Targetting me, my get grey steed, my men ye all gae wavy, and I will neither eat nor drink till Imbratun shall see me. Up on her milk-white steed, her men ye all gaed away hard, and she did neither eat nor drink till Imbratun did see her, and first appeared the fatal blow, and signed the axe to beat him, and Geordie coming down the stairs with bands of iron upon him, though he was chained in feather strang of iron and steel sae heavy, there was no one in all the court sae braw a man as Geordie. Oh, she's down on her bended knees, oh, what she's pale and weary. Oh, pardon, pardon, noble king, and gie me back my dearie. I hae born 7 sons tae my Geordie dear. The 7th ne'er saw his daddy. Oh, pardon, pardon, noble king, to take away from lady. But gar bend the need man make haste. Your king replied full lordly, oh, noble king, tak all that's mine, but gie me back my Geordie. Came and the Gordons ran, and they were stark and steady, and neither word among them all was Gordon's keep ye ready. But an aged lord at the king's right hand said, noble king, but hear me, that her held down £5,000, aye, and ye are back her dearie. Some gave her merks and some gave her pounds, some gave her dollars money, and she's held down £5,000, and she's got again her laddie. She blinked light in her Geordie's face, said, dear, I bought me Geordie, there's shimmering bloody bouts on the green, and I pursued my laddie. Thanks, Ray. I wrote the song in Australia, remembering Glasgow that I left behind back in the late 1960s. And Glasgow at that time was driven by sectarianism to a degree that thankfully is not now. And it's been a real joy to return and find that not only is my city not exactly sectarian free, but the sectarian animosity between the Catholics and Protestants is slowly healing. That can only be good. I think it's a lot to do with the fact that Rangers Football Club has finally dropped its policy of only having Protestants in the team, and so these sectarian bigots within the Rangers support are in this awful quandary because they're having to cheer for goals being scored by Catholics with them genuflect after scoring. You know? This is a song called Among Proddy Dogs and Papes. And the chorus was, at night the head of Wallace bled on solemn floral grapes, and the flower of Scotland bloomed again among proddy dogs and papes. I used to have to explain to people who Wallace is, but now you all know it's Mel Gibson. It's actually true. When you go to Stirling, they have a Wallace monument, and it's about 3 feet high, and it's Mel Gibson with freedom written underneath. It's on proddy dogs and papes. As a child I was raised on salted oats and tales of the savage past. I learned to love the drifting rain, the winter's icy blast. And all day long on the Holy Isle, far out in Lamlash Bay, I walked the hills in creaking shoes where the bones of the old ones lay.
And at night the head of Wallace fled on some laurel graves, and the flower of Scotland bloomed again among brawny dogs and babes. I was taught in school how Britannia's rule was forced on the Scots of old, bought and sold by a parcel rolled for a handful of English gold, till the fate was sealed at the London field, when the blood of the clans ran down through the twisted sea of history to the streets of Glasgow town. When at night the head of Wallace fled on some laurel graves, and the flower of Scotland bloomed again among brawny dogs and babes. On the long summer nights when the northern lights from the sky like a settling, the broads and tykes they fought from the dikes that ran from the housing scheme. With sticks and stones we broke our bones for the sake of the good old cause that has kept our country bound and chained under British laws. But at night the head of Wallace fled on some laurel graves, and the flower of Scotland bloomed again among brawny dogs and babes. And the old men loved how the blood was spilt on the banks of the river Boyne. 300 years of hate and fear, much like a miser's coin. And the Divebrook sand that Parkhead took on the first day of the year. See full-grown men drag it all out again while the bands on the terraces cheer. But at night the head of Wallace fled on solemn laurel graves, and the flower of Scotland bloomed again among brawny dogs and babes. Oh, at night the head of Wallace fled on solemn laurel graves, and the flower of Scotland bloomed again among brawny dogs and babes. At night the head of Wallace fled on solemn laurel graves, and the flower of Scotland bloomed again among brawny dogs and babes.
When the First World War broke out, a period of industrial upheaval, working class revolt that came to be known as the Great Unrest, came to a juddering halt all over Britain, except in Glasgow, where it intensified and came to be known as Red Clydeside. And over the past year I've been recording an album with Swab titled Red Clydeside. It's a collection of 12 songs that I've written about that period. As soon as the war was declared, the leader of the trade union movement in Scotland, a fellow called Arthur Henderson, travelled down to London to reassure the government that the Scottish working class would cease from all unrest and would agree to work for lower wages, work harder and longer in the interests of making sure that Britain won the war. And for that he was rewarded with a position on the War Cabinet, and the STUC, the Scottish Trade Union Congress, declared this a massive victory for the working class. Fortunately, there was a fellow up in Glasgow by the name of John McLean who saw through that rubbish. McLean was a school teacher on the south side of Glasgow, and he immediately came out against the war. He said it's an imperialist war, there's nothing in it for the working class of either side, it's simply a case of German workers and British workers slaughtering each other for what he called a sordid world capitalism. And for that he was jailed a total of 6 times by the British government under an act of Parliament called the Defence of the Realm Act, which made it a crime to do or say anything against the war. Twice he was sentenced to hard labour. First time for 3 years, the second time for 5 years. And on both occasions he was released early because of massive public pressure on the government. They came to realise that McLean, as a symbol of resistance, was actually more potent in jail than he was out on the streets where he was organising. He held regular meetings outside the recruiting office in Bath Street in Glasgow, and his slogan was, "Don't sign up for war." And one of the things that John used to say was, "A bayonet is a weapon with a working man at either end," which I think is remarkable. So the chorus of the song is, "A bayonet, that's a weapon with a working man at either end. Betray your country, serve your class. Don't sign up for war, my friend. Don't sign up for war." And there's a few Scots words in the song that you might not get. It ends off where it says, "Red Clyde was our blastert." That means in a total upheaval. And the government was wheeling brawly Guthert. If you're Guthert, it means you're in a total quandary about what to do. So.
Well, like you guess.
Yeah. Well and truly pissed. So the chorus goes like this. "A bayonet, that's a weapon, with the working man at either end. Betray your country, serve your class. Don't sign up for war, my friend. Don't sign up for war, my try it. A bayonet, that's a weapon, with the working man at either end. Betray your country, serve your class. Don't sign up for war, my friend. Don't sign up for war." See on Arthur Henderson, he plumber for the working men. When war broke out, he pressed his suit and he ran to catch the train. He signed a deal in London, they mere strikes until the fighting's done. In Glasgow town the work went round, back tent to John McLean. He said, "A bayonet, that's a weapon, with the working man at either end. Betray your country, serve your class. Don't sign up for war, my friend. Don't sign up for war." When they turned him out to Langside Hall, John stood up at the fountain. What he said was tailor-made to magnify the friction. "You patriots can roar and bawl, it's not but braggart's fiction. The only war we're fighting for is war against oppression." He said, "A bayonet, that's a weapon, but the working man at either end. Betray your country, serve your class. Don't sign up for war, my friend. Don't sign up for war." The police weighed them out to there and down to Queen's Park Station. They told him plain, "Offend again, and we'll make you rue the day, son." But Johnny didn't turn the hair, he caught for a demonstration. A mighty throng, 10,000 strong, turned out against conscription. The next time that they came for him, John Kennedy meant the business. He didn't plead for mercy, he said, "Give me British justice." The justice that he caught for stunned money into silence. When out to hell the hammer fell, 3 years was the sentence. He said, "A bayonet, that's a weapon, with the working man at either end. Betray your country, serve your class. Don't sign up for war, my friend. Don't sign up for war." Release McLean reached fever pitch and Mareman. In a year and a half he caught it off, but Christ had touched him, sair man. He came back old afore his time, but he didn't seem to care, man. Do all you can, I'm still the one, will cause you to beware, man.
They jailed McLean, he came guy close to Sept. With a rubber hose picked up his nose, they kept him slap-suppered. Let him out, or keep him in, Red Clyde was ever fully stuffed. Held why they turned the government was wheeling, brawling good at. He said, a bayonet, that's a weapon, when the working man and either end. Betray your country, serve your class, don't sign up for war, my friend. A bayonet, that's a weapon, when the working man and either end. Betray your country, serve your class, don't sign up for war, my friend. Don't sign up for war.
I hate to give you the impression that Red Clydeside was just a blokey sort of thing. The women of Glasgow played a leading role in that they led the 1915 rent strike. The population of Glasgow had massively increased because it was a centre of wartime production with the shipbuilding and the big steel foundry in Parkhead, the iron foundry rather, and this resulted in a housing shortage, and the guys that came to be known as the wartime profiteers, many of them were landlords. They were the people who were making money out of the sacrifices that others were having to make. They took the opportunity to start to drive up rents, so much so that the poor could no longer afford housing, and many were being evicted and their possessions being sold to pay off the arrears. There was a wee woman from Govan, a wee housewife from Govan called Mary Barber, and she decided that she just wasn't going to take this. So she made a poster that said, "I am not paying increased rent," and put it up in her window and just stopped paying her rent. She went on rent strike. And she spoke to her neighbours and convinced them to do the same. And soon all over Govan, every window was displaying a sign saying, "We are not paying increased rent." And Willie Gallagher, the Red Clydesider, in his autobiography, recollecting those times, his book is called Revolt on the Clyde. That's a magnificent book from a great old war horse of Hulett. He was a close associate of Maclean's. And he wrote, Mrs. Barber had an army of women who were wonderful. They could smell a sheriff's officer a mile away. Long before he had reached his destination, he would be sent in a hurried scramble for safety, surrounded by a horde of furious women. Basically, what they used to do was when the factor, who was the landlord's agent, and the sheriff's officer came to effect an eviction, a signal would be given either with a drum being beaten or a bell rung to alert the women. The men folk were away, either in the trenches or at the factory, so it was the women who had to fight. To alert the women that an eviction was about to take place, and they would come running out of the steamy, the communal wash house or the kitchen, wherever they happened to be, armed with pots, pans, frying pans, rolling pins, bags of flour, anything they lay their hands on, and basically beat the crap out of these men. And the amazing thing was that rents began to come down in Govan. So the people over on the other side of the Clyde in Partick, they saw this happening and they decided they would have a go at the same thing. So the rent strike spread to Partick and had exactly the same effect. The rents came down. By now it was spreading like wildfire all over Glasgow. At its peak, 250,000 households were on rent strike. And at that point the government decided to crack down, and all of the strike leaders, including Mary Barber, were arrested, taken to the station, held overnight, and released on bail, which was an enormous tactical error on the part of the authorities, because the first thing that the women did was they went to the factories and said to the men, all right, we've been holding the fight up until now, it's your turn. And on the day of the trial, the factories all over Glasgow emptied as tens of thousands of workers streamed out of the factories and marched on the courthouse. Willie Gallagher writes that the Dungareed army of the proletariat was on the march. They surrounded the courthouse and made it clear that they were going to tear it down unless the charges were dropped. So the Lord Provost of Glasgow got on the phone to Lloyd George and said, what am I going to do about this situation? And Lloyd George's answer was, tell him a Rent Restriction Act will be in place immediately. So the Rent Restriction Act of 1915 was fought for and won by the women of Glasgow, led by Mary Barber and her friend this wee song in her honour. And the chorus goes, it's in Glaswegian. I'm fae Govan, I'm from Govan. I'm fae Govan and ye're fae party. This yin here's fae Bridge o' Weir, this one here's from Bridge o' Weir. This yin here's fae Bridge o' Weir, and Dawn, that one, Dawn's fae Kinning Park. There's some that's prods, of course that's Protestants. There's some that's Catholic, but we're Mrs. Barber's army and we're here to do the work, here to do the business. So the tune goes like this one. I'm practicing. Clear the porridge out your throats. Yes, I'm fae Govan and you're fae party. This yin is fae Bridge o' Weir and Dawn's fae Kinning Park. There's some that's prods, there's some that's Catholic, but we're Mrs. Barber's army and we're here to do the work. Okay, in your best Glasgow accents. Cause I'm fae Govan and you're fae party. This yin is fae Bridge o' Weir and Dawn's fae Kinning Park. There's some that's prods, there's some that's Catholic, but we're Mrs. Barber's army and we're here to do the work. Lovely.
Well, got it.
In the tenements, the Glasgow, in the year 1915, it was one long bloody struggle to keep ourselves alive. We were counting out the coppers to buy our scraps of food, when the landlords put the rent up just because they could. For the factories were humming, there was overtime galore, but wages they were driven down to subsidise the war. Out came Mrs. Barber from her wee bit sing-a-ling. She said, I'll organise the lassies if I can't rouse the men, cause I'm fae Govan and you're fae party. This yin is fae Bridge o' Weir and Dawn's fae Kinning Park. There's some that's prods, there's some that's Catholic, but we're Mrs. Barber's army and we're here to do the work. Mrs. Barber made a poster saying we'll no pay higher rent, then chapped on every door of every Govan tenement. She said, put this in the wind here when you hear me bang the drum, or run out and chase the factor on the way to Kingdom Come. When the poor wee soul come round, he was battered black and blue by a regiment in pennies that knew just what to do. Mrs. Barber organised the gathering of the clans, and they bust out all the steamy handway pots and frying pans, saying, I'm fae Govan and you're fae party. This yin is fae Bridge o' Weir and Dawn's fae Kinning Park. There's some that's prods, there's some that's Catholic, but we're Mrs. Barber's army and we're here to do the work. Mrs. Barber's army spread through Glasgow like the plague. The maesters got the message and the message was nae vague. While our men folk fight the Kaiser, we'll stay home and fight the war against the greedy bastards who keep grinding down the poor. If you want to stop conscription, stand and fight the profiteers. Bring the hail big bloody sandpit crashing down around their ears. We'll no starve, said Mrs. Barber, while the men we call her in are marching off to hear their hearts blood wash like water down a drain. Cause I'm fae Govan and you're fae party. This yin is fae Bridge o' Weir and Dawn's fae Kinning Park. There's some that's prods, there's some that's Catholic, but we're Mrs. Barber's army and we're here to do the work. Well, it didn't take the government that line to realise, if you crack down on the leaders, then the rest will walk up. If you crack down on the leaders, then the rest will compromise. They arrested Mrs. Barber and they clapped her in the jail. But they made an awfully big mistake, they let her out on bail. She caught the men out of the factories on the Clyde and on the cart. They marched up to the court whose saying will tear the place apart. Mrs. Barber's army brought the maesters to their knees, with a regiment in pennies, backed by one in dungarees, saying, I'm fae Govan and you're fae party. This yin is fae Bridge o' Weir and Dawn's fae Kinning Park. There's some that's prods, there's some that's Catholic, but we're Mrs. Barber's army and for eternity the war. I want Mrs. Barber's army, and for eternity the war. Over in Australia back in the 1940s, a fellow called Lang Hancock discovered blue asbestos in a place in West Australia called Whitnum. And although it's absolutely certain that Lang Hancock was fully aware of the dangers of exposing people to blue asbestos, it can result in a lung condition called asbestosis, he went ahead and opened up his mine, placed adverts in newspapers all across Europe, particularly in the south of Italy, where he was relatively sure that people wouldn't be aware of what they were letting themselves in for, presenting Whitnam basically as a kind of sun-drenched workers' utopia, when in reality it was a stinking hellhole and highly toxic. And the deal was that if you signed a contract to mine asbestos for 2 years, the government would provide you with assisted passage over to Australia. £10 got you there, but the catch was you couldn't leave until your 2 years was up. And it's a documentary fact that the West Australian police actually tracked down anybody who left before the 2 years was finished and brought them back to finish their tenure. A great many of those are now either dead or dying from asbestosis. Whitnam was eventually closed down in the late 1970s and is presently deemed unfit for human habitation because of the asbestos tailings that were left lying all around, and young kids used to play in them. I wrote these two songs for a play that was under production from Sydney Workers' Theatre, who unfortunately in the right-wing feeding frenzy of the 1980s got their funding cut before it actually came to production. So I'll string the two songs together. The first is called Blue Murder, the second is called He Fades Away. The chorus of Blue Murder, day in, day out, every day they drive us harder, day in, day out, they're getting away with blue murder. They said it's easy money in a full-page ad in a local rag. Always nice and sunny. Come on, lad, and pack your bag. Off to West Australia. Leave the old hometown behind. Be a winner, not a failure. There's money to be made in the Whitnam mine. Day in, day out. Every day they drive us harder. Day in, day out. They're getting away with blue murder. They took me to my quarters, a stinking bed in an old tin shed. I got my working orders with a lamp and a tin hat on my head. Day in, day out, every day they drive us harder. Day in, day out, they're getting away with blue murder. My girl, she's a cook and cleaner. She works all day in the canteen hall. 6 days since I've seen her. Some don't have no girl at all. Day in, day out, every day they drive us harder. Day in, day out, they're getting away with blue murder. She sweeps the fine blue dust up. She dips it into an old wool pack. Never had a check-up. If she did, she'd get the sack. Day in, day out, every day they drive us harder. Day in, day out, they're getting away with blue murder. I feel my health is failing. I work all day in the killer dust. My kids play in the tailings. The boss says work and work I must. Day in, day out, every day they drive us harder. Day in, day out, they're getting away with blue murder. There's a man in my bed, I used to love him. His kisses used to take my breath away. There's a man in my bed, I hardly know him. I wipe his face and hold his hand and watch him as he slowly fades away. And he fades away. not like leaves that fall in autumn, turning gold against the grey, he fades away. Like the blood stains on the pillowcase that I wash every day, he fades away. There's a man in my bed, he's on a pension, although he's only 50 years of age. The lawyer says we might get compensation in the course of due procedure, but he wouldn't say for certain at this stage. And he fades away, not like leaves that fall in autumn, turning gold against the grey, he fades away. Like the blood stains on the pillowcase that I wash every day, he fades away. And he's not the only one who made the trip so many years ago to what the wet new mine. So many young men all before the time, and dying slow, they fade away. Wheezing vagabonds with lungs half clogged and filled with clay, they fade away. There's a man in my bed, they never told him the cost of bringing home his weekly pay. When the courts decide how much they owe him, how will he spend his money when he lies in bed and coughs his life away? And he fades away, not like leaves that fall in autumn, turning gold against the grey, he fades away. Like the blood stains on the pillowcase that I wash every day, he fades away. Not like leaves that fall in autumn, turning gold against the grey, he fades away. Like the blood stains on the pillowcase that I wash every day, he fades away.
Yes!
What time is stumps?
Well, if you think in terms of, you know, a song about 5 past, 10 past, that sort of time,
All right, okay. Time for a couple more. This is a song called The Siege of Union Street. Not far from where I lived in Sydney. I lived in Newtown. Just the next suburb over is Erco, or Erskineville is its name, but the folk call it Erco. Union Street in Erskineville was the site of a major confrontation. During the Depression, landlords in Australia and here were evicting destitute families from their home, a similar scenario to what precipitated the rent strike in 1915. And to combat this, an organisation was formed here, first of all, that had a counterpart in Australia called the Unemployed Workers Movement, the UWM, formed to fight those evictions. And the way that they fought was fairly straightforward, fairly basic and crude, but very, very effective. They took direct action. When an eviction was to take place, they would get as many of their members as they could possibly muster and surround the house and try and prevent it from proceeding. And in this way, many, many families were saved from eviction, both here and over there. But matters came to a head in Sydney on August the 14th, 1931, in Union Street. A war widow and her children were to be put out into the street, and the people were rightly incensed by this. And over 1,000 members of the UWM were present to try and prevent the eviction. They fought the police for 3 days over the matter. The police were actually backed up, it's been shown, by far-right hoodlums known as the New Guard, who were actually fascists. They fought for 3 days, and such was the furore over the whole thing and the public sympathy for the UWM and for the family involved, that the State Premier of New South Wales, Jack Lang, passed an Act of Parliament called the Moratorium Act. And once again, just like the Rent Restriction Act of 1915, it put an end to all such evictions. So the Moratorium Act was fought for and won by the people of Erskineville, one for all the people in Australia. And I had the wonderful good fortune to meet up with an old fellow called Jim Munro. Jim was a founding member of the UWM. He's now in his late 80s, still as sharp as a pin. And one of the things he said, describing the feeling of solidarity on that picket line back in 1931, he said, "No, they were grand old days on the barricade." Well, thank you, Jim. That's the chorus. So the street of Union Street. Okay. You should have seen us down at Depot, 14th August, Saturday night. To Newtown Stanmore, in Mount Petersham calls went out, Markers unite. We built a bloody great wall, with planks and boards full 7 foot tall. We didn't mind the howling wind and sleet, when we stood round the fire at Union Street. The man from the shop said, "Put it on tick." The kids came around with bottles and bricks. There was Irish stew and homemade lemonade. They were grand old days on the barricade. I never thought I would join a party, carry a car, nor see things red. The sight of barefoot children crying out on the pavement turned my head. Their old man's over in France, flapping like a rag on a barbed fence. The mum knows what she can to make ends meet, and she's down at the siege of Union Street. The man from the shop said, "Put it on tick." The kids came around with bottles and drinks. There was Irish stew and homemade lemonade. They were grand old days on the barricade. The cops came down and they came down hard. They must have been 500 strong. They called us Reds and they cracked our heads to teach us poor sinners right from wrong. I'll learn to listen at night. It's all at war when you stand and fight. I saw those brisk young coppers on their beat behave like dogs in Union Street. But the man from the shop said, "Put it on tick." The kids came around with bottles and drinks. There was Irish stew and homemade lemonade. They were grand old days in the barricade. Sunlight danced on the broken glass and shone like diamonds as morning broke. The cops were back by the railroad track and the streets were filled with working folk. They bashed us bloody and raw, but it forced Jack Lang to change the law, and now the landlords have to cop it sweet. And the red flag flies in Union Street. And the man from the shop gave liquor sticks to the kids who cleaned up the bottles and bricks. Down the years those memories never fade of the grand old days in the barricade. They were grand old days, they were grand old days, they were grand old days in the barricade. Thanks very much. It's been absolutely a joy to to sing for and play for. Made a few mistakes tonight, but I can assure you there's absolutely no mistakes on any of the CDs. Could we just have one more round of applause for all of the other people who played tonight, because I think the music, apart from myself, it's been absolutely wonderful tonight, and let's show our appreciation. I'll finish with a song at a time that's been sort of airbrushed out of the Scottish history books. I learned nothing about it when I was going to school and doing the history of Scotland. Well, in a little bit, it was sort of glossed over pretty much. If it was to happen today, it would be called ethnic cleansing. In 1792, the government of Britain, in conjunction with the Scottish lairds and with the industrialists in the south, both in the central belt of Scotland and in England, colluded together to evict the non-English speaking tribal society that had lived in the Scottish Highlands from time immemorial. They colluded to evict them from the glens in order to move in sheep to supply wool for the growing textile industry. In the Gaelic, 1792 is called Blanan an Curig, means the year of the sheep, and it was followed by the year of the burnings. After the sheep were moved in and the people evicted, they came and set fire to the crops and to the central beam of their houses, their crops. Trees were scarce up in the Highlands, and so once the central beam was burned, it was very, very difficult for them to return. And ships were waiting both in Glasgow and in the seaport of Ullapool to take those who survived this ethnic cleansing over to the colonies of America, Canada, New South Wales and Cape Breton, where there's still a vibrant Highland Scottish folk culture, particularly in Cape Breton and Nova Scotia. But that road, that experience rather, the Highlanders called it the Destitution Road. And the chorus to the song was, there's no use getting frantic, it's time to hump your load across the wild Atlantic down the Destitution Road. The tune goes like this. And there's no use getting frantic, it's time to hump your load across the wild Atlantic on the Destitution Road. Lovely. I'll say goodnight on this one. Thanks very much for listening. In the year of the shoot and the burning time, they cut our young men in their prime. The old Scots way was a hanging crime. The Gales of Caledonia, there's a den for the fox, a hedge for the hare, a nest in a tree for the birds of the air. But in North Scotland there's no place there. The Gales of Caledonia, and there's no use getting frantic, it's time to hump your load across the wild Atlantic on the Destitution Road. The bailiff came with a written door, and the gallant lads of the 40s war, they drove you out in the sleet and snow. The Gales of Caledonia, when your house was burned and your crops as well, you stood and wept in the blackened shell, and the winter was a living hell. The Gales of Caledonia, and there's no use getting frantic, it's time to hump your load across the wide Atlantic on the Destitution Road. The plague and the famine were clear and new as you made your way out to Ullapool, where you'd heard of a ship that was rigged to sail on the shores of Nova Scotia, and you sold your gear
You played your fare with your head held high, though your heart was sere, and you bid farewell forevermore to the glens of Caledonia. And there's no use getting frantic, it's time to hump your load across the wide Atlantic on the destination road. The land was cleared and the deal was made. Lord in a tartan blade, he stops and stares as the memories fade of the gales of Caledonia. And he hunts the deer in the lonely glen that once was home to 1,000 men. And the wind on the moor sings a sad refrain of the gales of Caledonia. And there's no skipping frantic, it's time to hump your load across the wide Atlantic on the destination road. Oh, there's no use getting frantic, it's time to hump your load across the wide Atlantic on the destination road. Woo! Yeah.
Tonight, because I want another. So be quiet. He's already agreed. So yes, please. That was wonderful.
Well, Glasgow got through yet another marching season without. A lot of folk aren't aware of just the extent and the depth of the hold that Orangeism has in Glasgow. That, the Scottish Orange Order actually formed before its Irish counterpart. It was formed in 1822 under the patronage of the Duke of Gordon. It's a song called The Old Divide and Rule. It's about the way that sectarianism, amongst other things, has been used to divide the oppressed, keep them in their place.
Now all my life I've lived beside the waters that they call the Clyde. I built the ships and watched them glide down the Primilosser. Trudged to work in sleet and rain, labour for another's gain. Know your place and don't complain, that's the rich man's loss. When I was young, I read with pride of Scotland's heroes fought and died to keep the nation fortified against the British Crown. Scots were Haley, Wallace were led by clerics fancy were misled, fought among themselves instead, quiet were brought down sad. When the Billy boys are marching in the stash their fathers wore, the day they slew their Fenian crew 300 years before, the gentry give a smile and lift their glasses to John Bull, who keeps us all in poverty with the old divide and rule. The pipes that play, the drums that beat on Heather, the Len and Cobble Street, the sullen tramp of marching feet returned the call to arms. In the field where cattle grazed, brother's hand that brother raised, thus the name of God was praised, the smoke of burning from arms. When the Billy boys are marching in the stash their fathers wore, the day they slew their Fenian crew 300 years before, the gentry give a smile and lift their glasses to John Bull, who keeps us all in poverty with the old divide and rule. See the day when tyranny is swept away, honest work for honest pay becomes the right of all, sir. As for Gentile, so for Jew, Protestant and Catholic too, every race and every hue secure within four walls, sir. And the Billy Boy and Fenian together make a stand to raise the flag of workers' power all across the